The world is talking about the crisis caused by United States tariffs on Canada, Mexico, China, and even the European Union. The economic tension between Canada and the United States, which has been going on for years, has escalated in recent days. After President Donald Trump announced that he would impose new tariffs on Canada, Canada responded with a harsh response. Canada announced that they will impose new taxes on Alaskan trade to the United States. From now on, every truck on its way to the United States will pay an extra fee when passing through British Columbia.
How unified we are, how committed we are to working as a country to stand up for each other and our own independence on our own 2 feet. And I say we don't let up until the president takes the threat off the table.
So, why did Canada take the step to force American vehicles to access Canada? President Donald Trump first announced new tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China on January 31st, 2025.
25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States.
Since then, United States-Canada tariffs have been announced, postponed, implemented, paused, modified. Starting at 12:01 anti-meridium on March 4, 2025, the United States imposed additional tariff rates on Canadian goods entering Canada for consumption or withdrawn from storage for consumption. This marked the beginning of a difficult period for trade in North America. On March 5, President Trump halted tariffs on cars from Canada and Mexico after meeting with Stellantis, Ford, and General Motors. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt reported a 1-month exemption for all cars from the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement and stated that the reciprocal tariffs would take effect on April 2, 2025.
Reciprocal tariffs will still go into effect on April 2nd, but at the request of the companies associated with USMCA, the President is giving them an exemption for 1 month so they are not at an economic disadvantage.
On March 6, the President halted tariffs on Canadian products under the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. He also reduced the tariff on potassium from 25% to 10%. As tensions escalated, Trump said on March 7 that the United States could soon impose reciprocal tariffs on Canadian dairy and lumber products. The United States President's inconsistent statements brought tensions to a peak in Canada. As if Trump's heavy tariffs on steel, aluminum, and agricultural products were not enough. His announcement that he would now target dairy and lumber products created a wave of rebellion in Canada. Canada is preparing a harsh retaliation plan against this move, which resonates especially in Canadian provinces. Canadian provinces are cancelling contracts with United States businesses, pulling American products off the shelves, increasing tolls on United States vehicles, and even planning to impose new export taxes. In this context, the Canadian province of British Columbia has signalled that it will retaliate against Trump's tariffs, escalating the economic war between the two countries. The Premier of the province, David Eby, said he plans to introduce a bill that would impose fees on commercial trucks travelling through his province to Alaska. The legislation is likely to affect commercial trucks travelling on the Alaska Highway, which stretches about 1,390 miles from Dawson Creek to Fairbanks, Alaska. Currently, United States truck traffic can pass through British Columbia duty-free. Statistics from the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities show that more than 90% of cargo going to Alaska is transported by sea rather than by truck. But trucks carry high-value cargo that needs to be moved quickly. Eby noted that this is one of several steps President Donald Trump has taken in response to his unregulated tariffs on Canada. According to Eby, Trump does not want to buy Canadian goods and create mutual opportunities for the two countries, but wants to take what Canada has to offer by force. Eby characterised Trump's back and forth on whether the tariffs would be applied to Canadian goods or delayed further as a deliberate tactic to weaken their resolve. In addition to the proposed toll law, the British Columbia government has been instructed to stop buying American products whenever possible. State liquor stores have been ordered to stop selling alcohol from Republican-run states like Alaska. United States products have been pulled from shelves in Alberta, Manitoba, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and Labrador, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Quebec, and Prince Edward Island. This hit more than 3,600 American-made alcoholic products hard. According to the British Columbia government, it specifically targets red provincial liquor products, which will cause producers in those provinces to lose $40 million a year. The Premier said he plans to do everything he can to remove internal trade barriers between Canadian provinces and pass legislation that will allow his province to respond quickly to Trump's presidential decisions. In addition to British Columbia, other provinces are uniting against Donald Trump. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith called Trump's tariffs an unfair economic attack on Canadians and Albertans and a clear violation of the trade agreement signed during the first term of the same United States president. Smith said Alberta fully supports Canada's federal response and will no longer purchase American alcohol or video lottery terminals. But Alberta will not reduce oil and gas exports or impose new export taxes on these products. In Manitoba, businesses adversely affected by the tariffs will be able to defer payments of provincial sales tax and health and post-secondary education tax. Premier Wabanakwut Kinyu is also considering reducing hydropower exports and barring United States companies from bidding on Manitoba government contracts. New Brunswick will not sign new contracts with American companies and is seeking new markets for products traditionally exported to the United States, such as lumber and seafood. Premier Susan Holt said her province has been preparing for Trump's tariffs for months. Holt said that the president may not have realized that they supply jet fuel to American defense. If you go to the base in Maine, those planes do not take off without Canadian jet fuel. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador is seeking new markets for local businesses and encouraging residents to avoid buying American products. Nova Scotia has doubled tolls for United States commercial vehicles at the Cobequid Pass and limited provincial purchases for American businesses. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is hiding no punches. Ford has said they will do everything in response to the United States tariffs, including cutting their power. Ford said Ontario will impose provincial tariffs on electricity delivered to Michigan, Minnesota and New York, the three largest customers of Ontario electricity. The 25% surcharge will take effect on March 10. Prince Edward Island is reviewing all United States government contracts. Quebec announced a 25% penalty on American firms bidding on Quebec government contracts. Prime Minister François Legault is also considering halting electricity exports to the United States. In light of all these developments, we can say that a trade war between Canada and the United States has become inevitable. So how do consumers react to trade wars? When news of a possible trade war first breaks, consumers tend to follow the situation until more information becomes available. Once the government announces which products will be affected, consumers start to take action. Some Canadians have already started stocking up on products that are likely to face price increases or shortages after tariffs are imposed. Stockpiling can lead to product shortages at retailers, which can be exacerbated by the fear of missing out. Media headlines highlighting empty shelves can act as reinforcement loops, further fueling frenzied shopping behaviour. This kind of panic shopping is common in times of crisis, just like the rush to buy supplies before the onset of a major hurricane and the stockpiling of essential supplies during the COVID-19 pandemic. With the outbreak of the trade war, both consumers and retailers will have to adapt. Shortages are likely as new import procedures slow the time it takes for products to cross borders. The resulting delays, combined with higher tariff rates, will push some retailers to raise prices to cover cost increases. Others may limit purchases to discourage hoarding behaviour. Some firms may take advantage of the situation by raising prices of products not covered by tariffs to increase profits. This is a practice known as greedflation during a pandemic. Another possible outcome is shrinkflation, where package sizes shrink while prices remain unchanged. Some shortages can be mitigated as consumers adapt by changing their shopping habits or using their stockpiled reserves. But retailers may struggle to manage their inventories as demand fluctuates. Navigating these shifts will require careful planning. Trump's trade war has intensified calls to buy Canadian as a way to support domestic products. The Canadian government has recently threatened to impose tariffs on imported products containing Canadian substitutes. For example, Kentucky whiskey has been targeted instead of Canadian whiskey, or Florida orange juice instead of Canadian apple juice. However, replacing imports entirely with domestic goods poses significant challenges. Many Canadian farmers and producers lack the capacity to rapidly increase production to meet demand. At least in the short term, production costs can be significantly higher in Canada than abroad. This is one of the main reasons for relying on imports in the first place. Clothing production is a good example. It has a high labour component. This is because much of it is relocated to low-cost countries in Asia. In general, United States productivity is higher than Canadian productivity, which contributes to lower costs in the United States. Moreover, some products, such as tropical fruits and vegetables, cannot be produced in Canada at all. Moreover, trade wars create uncertainty, making farmers and producers hesitant to make large-scale investments that may not pay off when the trade conflict ends. This approach sacrifices potential short-term gains for long-term stability, while exacerbating shortages and price spikes during and after a trade war. Unlike one-off events like hurricanes or fluctuating disruptions like COVID-19, the outcome of a trade war is difficult to predict. This makes it difficult to predict what the new normal will be. Of course, some consumers who substitute domestic products for imported ones may continue to do so in the long run, but others may switch back to imports if tariffs are removed and prices are lowered. Knowing this could happen, domestic producers may not increase production during a tariff war. Those that do may find themselves with overcapacity and excess inventories after the conflict ends. Meanwhile, producers and retailers who raise prices to cover tariff-related costs may choose to keep prices high even after tariffs are lifted. For example, canned food prices saw a significant price increase following the implementation of the 2018 United States steel tariffs. Consumers' acceptance of price increases. Adaptation to new high-cost supply chain structures or efforts to protect profit margins could potentially create a higher floor price in a post-trade war economy. How can Canada best protect itself from the effects of a trade war? The easy answer is to become more self-sufficient. But this is a costly option that requires technology, skilled labour, and capital investments. As a result, this option should only be chosen for the most necessary and essential products, such as certain medicines and basic foodstuffs. Other strategies should also be considered. Build supply chain resilience. Sourcing from multiple suppliers and holding inventory of the most essential products may increase inventory and procurement costs, but will reduce risks. It enables businesses to withstand short-term supply chain disruptions and puts them in a better position to survive a trade war. There must be honest communication. Governments and retailers should regularly update the public on negotiations, new tariff schedules, and potential price changes, reducing the guesswork that fuels panic buying and hoarding. Transparency enables individuals to make the best purchasing decisions. It is also important to protect low-income consumers. Retailers should limit sales volumes of essential products during blackouts to avoid hoarding behaviour. Governments should consider tax cuts and subsidies for individuals on a budget to ease the burden of higher tariff-related costs. Supply chain disruptions inevitably lead to higher costs and product shortages, and often affect low-income households the most. Even after the trade war ends, higher prices could continue as the new norm. To minimise the impact of tariffs, governments and businesses need to adopt policies that reduce economic hardship and create fairer outcomes for all. These measures could help Canada navigate a potential trade war with Trump more confidently. But how will tariffs affect Americans' wallets? After Donald Trump ran and won on a promise to curb inflation, a trade war threatens to raise the price of everything from food and clothing to cars and computers. By some estimates, tariffs could cost the average United States household $830 a year. This figure does not include expected retaliatory tariffs from Canada, China, and Mexico. Americans will not feel the full impact of the tariffs immediately, But import duties could raise the price of almost everything, especially since more than 40% of America's imports last year came from the countries targeted by Trump. How much and when prices rise will depend on the extent to which businesses can absorb the higher cost of tariffs or restructure their supply chains to minimize costs and how much stock they have on hand. Mexico and Canada supply a significant share of several basic food categories. For example, Mexico is the largest supplier of fruits and vegetables to the United States, while Canada is a leader in exports of grain, livestock and meat, poultry, and more. Agricultural products, especially from Mexico and Canada, can become more expensive for consumers as grocery retailers operate on thinner profit margins than most industries. With little room to absorb higher tariff costs, grocers may have to pass them on to shoppers. Target Chief Executive Officer Brian Cornell said Trump's tariffs on Mexico could force the company to raise prices on fruits and vegetables this week. Cornell said Target relies heavily on imported produce from Mexico during the winter months. Although the United States usually exports more agricultural products than it imports, the value of imports has risen faster than exports over the past decade, according to the United States Department of Agriculture. In addition, climate change has increased United States dependence on countries like Mexico, where growing conditions are more favorable. According to the United States Department of Agriculture data, the United States imported $46 billion worth of agricultural products from Mexico last year. This includes $8.3 billion worth of fresh vegetables, $5.9 billion worth of beer, and $5 billion worth of distilled spirits. But the largest category of agricultural imports from Mexico last year was fresh fruits. The United States imported $9 billion worth of these fruits, with avocados accounting for $3.1 billion of that total. In addition to the tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China, Trump announced on Monday plans to impose a separate tariff on agricultural imports. This could further increase the price of food from these countries and around the world. Consumer electronics are among the top goods the United States imported from China last year, according to federal trade data. These include cell phones, televisions, laptops, video game consoles, monitors, and all the components that power them. China is also a major supplier of household appliances. These, along with toys and shoes, are particularly exposed to Trump's tariff threats. According to Footwear Distributors and Retailers of America, a trade group representing Nike, Steve Madden, Cole Haan, and other shoe brands, 99% of shoes sold in the United States are imported. More than half of the shoes sold in the United States are made in China, the trade group said. The United States is also dependent on China for toys and sports equipment, including products such as soccer balls, footballs, and baseballs. The United States imports 75% of its toys and sports equipment from China. Cars sold in America are no longer entirely American-made. In many cases, parts cross the borders of Mexico and Canada several times before a car is completed. Automakers have built factories in North America, a free trade zone. According to an analysis of both public and private data by the Anderson Economic Group, a Michigan-based think tank, the cost of producing cars across North America will increase by between $3,500 and $12,000. In short, this trade war and tariff showdown will have severe consequences for both countries. Neither Canada nor the United States will emerge victorious, but everyone will pay the price of economic instability. In this war with no winners, it is not competition that matters, but the development of balanced policies to protect economic prosperity. Thank you for following us.